Max Verstappen has just uttered the most chilling phrase a champion could ever say about his own team. He didn't speak of anger, he didn't speak of disappointment, he said something much worse. He said that the word despair no longer exists for him, that he's moved past that phase, that now he simply lets it go and tries again the next day. Stop for a second and grasp the weight of these words. This isn't an angry driver. This is a driver who has stopped hoping. And when a four-time world champion reaches that point, the end of a historic relationship is much closer than it seems. Because anger can still be managed. Resignation, on the other hand, almost never. Trust me, because what happened in Hungary is even more unsettling. Let's go straight to the heart of the problem because this time it's different from everything we'd seen before. In qualifying at the Hungarian circuit, Verstappen's car didn't fail at just one point. It degraded lap after lap. You heard that right. It wasn't the tires wearing out, as normally happens. It was the car itself getting worse with every lap. He explained it with words that chill the blood. He said that usually it's the tire that deteriorates, but when instead it's the car that degrades, then you've got a huge problem. Over 18 completed laps in qualifying, his RB22 became increasingly impossible to drive, with the rear end disappearing and the car spinning in his hands. A talent of this caliber, capable of taming any car, reduced to a helpless passenger in his own single-seater. Write right away in the comments whether you think Verstappen will leave Red Bull at the end of the year and subscribe to the channel, because in a moment I'll reveal the phrase he shouted over the radio that went around the world. Let's move on. Because the symbolic moment of all this came on the final corner of his final attempt. The car spun out from under him, a spin that caused yellow flags and that, according to him, perfectly sums up the entire weekend. And immediately after, still inside the cockpit, with adrenaline sky high and frustration through the roof, Verstappen completely lost his composure on the radio in front of millions of people. He told the team that the car was completely destroyed aerodynamically and that it just kept getting worse. Then he added harsh words, calling the whole thing a joke, honestly a joke, and closing with a curse about the disastrous weekend. These aren't the words of a driver who had a bad day. These are the words of a man who no longer trusts his own car and perhaps no longer trusts the team that builds it for him either. And here comes the detail that makes the whole story even more worrying. If this part is keeping you glued to the screen, leave a like right now, because now we understand why it's so serious. Verstappen explained that the real nightmare isn't having a problem. It's having a different problem every single weekend. He recalled that his 2 previous accidents had been caused by the rotating rear wing. But not this time. This time it was something completely different, an aerodynamic degradation that even he couldn't understand. He admitted something a champion of his caliber almost never says. I don't know exactly what the problem was, and he added that the team could see in the data the aerodynamics progressively deteriorating without being able to explain the cause. In practice, the engineers were watching the car collapse on their monitors, helpless, while their champion battled on track with an increasingly ungovernable machine. Picture the scene from the driver's point of view. You're considered the best in the world. You have incredible sensitivity. You instantly understand when something's wrong. And you find yourself inside a car that loses grip corner after corner, that oversteers on you for no reason, that at a certain point simply becomes undriveable. And on top of that, you can't even do anything about it, because halfway through qualifying, you can no longer adjust the front wing, and so the entire balance of the car falls apart. Verstappen said it clearly. Getting that car into a decent working window was practically impossible, and qualifying turned into a genuine disaster with no solution whatsoever. In the end, the 4-time champion qualified only 6th, then moved up to 4th position thanks to penalties handed to Lewis Hamilton and Kimi Antonelli. His teammate Isaac Hadjar will start even further back, in the 8th row. And to think that the team boss, Laurent Mekies, before the weekend had hoped that track might actually suit their car better. Reality turned out to be far more brutal than expectations. A team that not only isn't improving, but can't even predict where it will go wrong next time. And for a driver who lives on certainty and millimeter precision, that's the worst torture there is. Because you can't fight an enemy you can't even see. Turn on the notification bell now, because now we get to the deepest part, the one that truly explains why Verstappen is so unhappy. Because the problem isn't just this Red Bull falling apart, it's the entire 2026 Formula One season that, according to him, has betrayed the spirit of racing. Verstappen revealed something shocking. He said that when he criticized the new regulations early on, everyone told him to stop complaining and keep quiet. In Belgium, he had even joked that someone outside the press room might shoot him if he kept talking about it, only to clarify in Hungary that he was just joking. But that now, race after race, more and more people are finally starting to understand what he had predicted long ago. And he added a line that is pure sporting nobility. "I'm not doing this because I'm not winning anymore. I'm doing it because I care about this sport." A response to those who accused him of protesting only out of envy of his rivals. And the technical point that drives him crazy is fascinating. Verstappen argues that today the fastest drivers can no longer make the difference, because everything has been reduced to managing the throttle. If you're faster in a corner, he explains, you pay for that speed on the following straight, losing power. In any other category, time gained in a corner is time earned. Here instead, it becomes a punishment. And that's why, he says, we see teammates so close to each other this year, and why the most talented drivers can no longer show their full potential. You're not allowed to make the difference because doing so only means being penalized on the straight afterward. And he told an anecdote worth more than 1,000 analyses. When he won the Overtake of the Month award for a move on Hamilton in Austria, they asked him on the podium how he'd done it. And he, smiling, replied that he had simply pressed the turbo button and suddenly found himself with more power than his rival. Formula One actually cut that clip from its own social media channels. But for Verstappen, that joke sums everything up. He said that sometimes you pass others in the middle of the straight without doing anything at all, while they burn through their battery fighting each other. And that, with these wings opening up everywhere, you follow a rival in the slipstream, drastically reducing drag, and you pass him without even a real braking duel. And that this simply is not real racing. Casual fans enjoy it because they see more overtakes. True enthusiasts, on the other hand, understand perfectly that it isn't real and that this isn't what real racing is about. Extremely heavy words, spoken not by a driver at the back of the grid, but by the absolute dominator of recent years. So let's put together every piece of this unsettling puzzle. A car that degrades on its own, with a different problem every week that not even the engineers can explain. A champion who admits he's moved past despair, which is the most dangerous thing of all. A team that hoped for a better weekend and instead got yet another disaster. And a man who now openly criticizes the entire sport, convinced it's heading in the wrong direction. Add all this to the exit clause hanging over his future like a sword, and you'll understand why more and more people in the paddock are convinced that Verstappen's days at Red Bull are now numbered. Because no champion, however loyal, stays forever on a team he's stopped believing in. Now it's your turn to speak, and the question weighs like a boulder. Do you think Max Verstappen is simply going through a rough patch with a difficult car? Or is what we're witnessing truly the beginning of the end between him and Red Bull? Write a single word in the comments. Stay if you believe he'll still find the strength to rebuild everything. Or goodbye if you think the breakup is now just a matter of time. We'll read every single comment one by one. And if you don't want to miss the moment this bomb finally explodes, subscribe to the channel right now because we'll tell you everything before anyone else. See you in the next video.